In other words, the history of America's laws, its constitutional system, the reason for the American Revolution, the basis of its guiding political philosophy, has to be understood in the context of its religious roots. And that's exactly what James Madison said there. In fact, here's what Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1781 in his Notes on the State of Virginia. He said this, Thomas Jefferson, secular, liberal Thomas Jefferson, who liberals like to quote out of context. Jefferson said this, God who gave us life gave us liberty. And can the liberties of a nation be thought secure when we have removed their only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of the people that their liberties are a gift from God, that they are not to be violated but with his wrath? Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just and that his justice cannot sleep forever. That's Thomas Jefferson. Every president from George Washington forward has placed his hand on a Bible and asked for the protection of God upon assuming office. Both houses of Congress open each day's session with a prayer. The phrase, "In God we trust," is on our currency. Witnesses are expected to swear on a Bible before testifying in a court of law. The Christian Sabbath is a national day of rest. Many states still restrict the sale of liquor and the operation of restaurants on the Lord's Day in order to encourage religious worship and time spent at home. A government official still opens each day's session of the Supreme Court with the prayer, "God save the United States and this honorable court." End quote. The Ten Commandments appear on the wall above the head of the Chief Justice of the United States at the Supreme Court, which is ironic when one considers that it is the Supreme Court that declared it unconstitutional for states to do the same in public schools. These laws, these customs, they all have their origins in America's Christian past and provide more than just a clue as to the assumptions guiding the creation of the American system of government, assumptions the Founding Fathers had about man's nature, his place in eternity, and the character of the God to whom we are accountable. It's these ultimate concerns that determine the shape of society. Now, the great 19th century writer Alexis de Tocqueville, he came to America in the 1830s to find out the secrets of America's astonishing prosperity and success as a new nation. He wanted to come over and study America and find out why America was so successful so quickly. His great book, Democracy in America, is must-reading for anybody who really wants to understand what it is that makes America unique and exceptional. We hear about American exceptionalism, and really that idea comes in large part from de Tocqueville's study of what made America so successful. So here's what Tocqueville observed, Alexis de Tocqueville. He said, quote, "Almost all sects of the United States are comprised within the great unity of Christianity, and Christian morality is everywhere the same. In the United States, the sovereign authority is religious. The Americans combine the notions of Christianity and of liberty so intimately in their minds that it is impossible to make them conceive the one without the other." Alexis de Tocqueville also foresaw what would likely happen if America were ever to abandon this Puritan religious and moral tradition. He predicted that if this were to happen, we would likely see democracy fail in America. He wrote that if this were to happen, we would likely see the rise of a new form of despotism, a new form of tyranny unique to democratic societies. Over its people, Tocqueville wrote, will stand, quote, "an immense protective power which is alone responsible for securing their enjoyment and watching over their fate. It gladly works for their happiness, but wants to be the sole agent and judge of it. It provides for their security, foresees and supplies their necessities, facilitates their pleasures, manages their principal concerns, directs their industry, makes rules for their testaments, and divides their inheritances. Thus it daily makes the exercise of free choice less useful and more rare, restricts the activity of free will within a more narrow compass, and little by little robs each citizen of the proper use of his own faculties." End quote. So tell me, has this happened here in America? Liberals hate the God of the Bible. They hate Christianity. But look what has replaced the God of the Bible. A new God. And this new God is the all-powerful state, exactly as Alexis de Tocqueville predicted in the 1830s. Daniel Webster, the great statesman, lawyer, and orator of the early days of the Republic, in a speech delivered in 1820 at Plymouth, Massachusetts, he was celebrating the Pilgrim landing at Plymouth Rock, and he made this point, the same point that de Tocqueville just made. Here's what Daniel Webster said, quote, "Let us not forget the religious character of our origin. Our fathers were brought hither by their high veneration of the Christian religion. They journeyed by its light and labored in its hope. They sought to incorporate its principles with the elements of their society and to diffuse its influence through all their institutions, civil, political, or literary. Let us cherish these sentiments and extend this influence still more widely in the full conviction that that is the happiest society which partakes in the highest degree of the mild and peaceful spirit of Christianity." End quote. That was Daniel Webster. So it's not surprising that the enemies of liberty very often attack the religious institutions of a nation. We certainly saw this in the Soviet Union, in communist China, and other communist countries, where Christians and Jews are the first to feel the wrath of the state. The Bible, in a communist country, is viewed as subversive to communism and to statism, and so it's outlawed in these countries. Secular ideologies take many forms: Marxism, Nazism, socialism, various forms of collectivism. All are incompatible with the God of the Bible because all end up in the rule of man over man with the aid of an enormous governing apparatus, which is what we're getting now with Obamacare and the rest of the bureaucratic apparatus that he is setting up here. That's why those who promote a larger state role in our lives are the same ones who attack Christianity, who attack religious faith. We now live under a government led by President Obama who has no respect for liberty, zero, no respect for our Constitution, which sets up a limited government and specifically enumerated powers. President Obama thinks our Constitution is fatally flawed. He thinks the problem with the Supreme Court, he said this in a radio interview, is that our country has not completely broken free of the chains on government imposed by our Constitution. President Obama and the left today believe not in liberty, but in the all-powerful state. To them, the Constitution is an obstacle, a roadblock to what they want to achieve, an obstacle that they have to somehow get around. Our situation today is similar in many ways to that of the colonists, when they decided to stand firm on first principles and declare their independence from British rule, from the British king. There has been a concerted attempt by liberals to recast a Christian-based American Revolution in the image of the anti-Christian French Revolution. The French Revolution, of course, predictably, ended in tyranny. Liberation of the individual was not an idea of the French philosophes. It was a Christian idea, and specifically a Puritan idea. America was settled overwhelmingly by fundamentalist Protestants. The Mayflower Compact, signed by the Pilgrims in 1620, is proof that the social compact was a blueprint for government that was enacted by Christians long before thinkers of the Enlightenment claimed to have arrived at that same notion through human reason. Separation of church and state was not a reaction against religion, but a reaction against state power. It was a reaction against statism, not against religion, and it was not introduced by skeptics. It was introduced by Protestants, largely for religious reasons. It was introduced by Puritans, the most religious, just about, of any people. The revisionist pens of such 20th century historians as Charles Beard, Henry Steele Commager, Gary Wills, and the standard textbook writers have gone a long way toward altering America's history to conform to an agnostic, secular, humanist kind of a creed. As Alexander Solzhenitsyn once wrote, "To destroy a people, you must first sever their roots."